I arrived at the cabin just after dark. The wind bit through my coat collar. Snow clung to my boots like something was trying to pull me back. But my hand gripped the bourbon tighter, his favorite. I'd even tied a red ribbon around the bottle. I thought, when he saw me, he'd smile. That crooked grin he wore the first time we danced barefoot in my kitchen. The one that made me forget I'd been divorced. Forget that trusting a man again was the one thing I'd sworn I'd never do. I thought I was being romantic, spontaneous, maybe even brave. But then I stopped, right at the edge of the wooden porch. Through the thin crack of the old cabin door, I heard his voice. Low, clear, unmistakably calm. If she vanished, he said I could clear my debts. Silence. Then a second voice amused. Finally start fresh with the woman you actually want. Laughter. Not nervous laughter, not shameful, just relaxed. Like they were talking about dinner plans. I stood there, frozen not by the cold, but by how easily he said it. Drake Hensley, my fiancé, the man I thought I was flying toward, was already planning a life without me in it. But let me take you back before the porch, before the bourbon, before the truth cracked open like ice beneath my feet. My name is Leona Whitaker. I'm 39. I run a boutique brand strategy firm in Austin. I've built my own life, my own money, my own peace twice over. And then I met Drake. He walked into a leadership conference with confidence that filled the room, smart, composed, just the right amount of charm to make you lean in. He said I was brilliant, that I had presence. He made me feel like I wasn't rebuilding, I was evolving. We fell fast. He moved in within 2 months, proposed less than a year later. I should have questioned why a venture fund manager with a flexible income was always vague about his investments, why he didn't have a fixed office, why he let me pay for more things than I should have. But I believed him when he said love is about trust, about covering each other when it matters. When he told me he was heading to a weekend cabin trip with his college buddies, I said I'd miss him. He kissed my forehead, called it a sacred tradition, and promised he'd come back refreshed. Instead, I booked a ticket, 3 flights, 12 hours, no warning, because something in my gut had stopped whispering. It was screaming now. And I thought, if I surprised him, if I showed up and just saw him in his element, maybe I'd quiet the fear that had started curling inside me. But I didn't knock. I didn't smile. I didn't even move. Because I had heard enough. Have you ever heard something that stopped your heart, but made you stay completely still, just to hear the rest? It didn't start with a scream. It never does. The beginning of betrayal sounds like nothing. Silences where there used to be laughter. Missed texts. A shift in how your name sounds when they say it. But I told myself he was just tired. Running a fund, managing clients, always on the go. I don't want to burden you with the details, he'd say. You already do so much. And I did. I covered half the rent. Then all of it when he said he was reinvesting in a big play. Paid off a credit card he forgot was still active. Twice. Still, I called it love, support, partnership. He called it us. But things kept stacking. Little things. The first time I noticed, we were at dinner with my friend Camille. Camille asked about the retreat. Drake didn't flinch. Said it was in Boulder. Later that night, he told me it was in Telluride. I asked about the change. He said I misheard. That I always mix up places. Gaslight line 1. Then there was his phone. It was always face down now, always on Do Not Disturb. He used to leave it everywhere, on the counter, on the couch. Once he even left it in the fridge by accident. Not anymore. Then one night while he was in the shower, it lit up. Not a number I recognized. Not a name I'd heard. Just a message. She signed it. I froze, stared at it. I didn't touch it. Because I already knew, if I opened it, I couldn't go back. When he came out, towel around his waist, he kissed my neck and asked what we should order for dinner. I smiled, answered, played the part. Because I wasn't ready to be right, not yet. You'd be surprised how long a smart woman can live in denial if the lie is told with enough charm. But even charm has an expiration date. The second time was at my office holiday party. Drake had always been good and crowds knew how to charm my coworkers without stealing the spotlight. But that night he was distant. He stood in the corner swirling his whiskey, watching me like I was something on the menu. When I walked over, he smiled, but his eyes didn't. Your team really loves you, he said. Then added almost too casually, they'd be devastated if something ever happened to you. I laughed, or tried to, but the words stuck, like they'd been rehearsed. The next day, he left a pamphlet on our kitchen counter, folded neatly, a guide to estate optimization for modern couples. I thought it was interesting, he said over coffee. Just in case you know, life throws something unexpected. I stared at him. He sipped. He made everything sound reasonable, responsible, romantic even. That night, I found the manila folder on his desk. It wasn't hidden, just placed, like he wanted me to see it but not open it. Inside, drafts of legal documents, power of attorney, a new will, all with my name. All unsigned. I asked him about it the next morning. He smiled, leaned in, and kissed my forehead. You don't need to worry about any of that, he said. I'm just planning ahead, for us. I nodded. I wanted to believe it. But that folder haunted me. More than the late nights. More than the credit card bills. More than the new watch I never bought him, the one that buzzed quietly against his wrist while he slept. I started noticing receipts. Private gym sessions in neighborhoods he didn't live near. Charges at restaurants he swore he hated. One from a jewelry store in New York. He told me he was in Dallas that weekend. Each detail was small, not enough to accuse, but just enough to undo me one thread at a time. Still, I did nothing. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was paranoid. Because if I admitted it, if I really looked at the truth, I'd have to do something about it. And I wasn't ready. Not until the porch. Not until the bourbon. Not until the words came through the door like a knife. If she vanished, I could start over. I'd ignored 100 signs, but that one broke the spell. Telluride was colder than I expected. The snow came down soft but constant, like the world was trying to mute the truth. I'd rented a small SUV at the airport, navigated the winding roads on muscle memory and spite. My palms gripped the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me from turning around. 12 hours, 3 delays, a bottle of bourbon in my bag still wrapped in gold tissue. I'd pictured the moment 100 different ways. He'd open the door stunned, say my name like a prayer, pull me into his arms, maybe tear up a little. We'd laugh about how crazy I was to show up unannounced, and I'd say something charming, something that made all the distance between us feel small again. But that version of the story died the second I heard his voice. The cabin was nestled between pines, dimly lit, silent from the outside. I parked far enough that he wouldn't see the headlights. Snow crunched beneath my boots as I crept toward the porch, bottle still in hand, heart doing that awful arrhythmic thing it does when truth is too close. And then his voice. If she vanished, I could clear my debts. I froze. Everything inside me stilled, even my breath. Then another voice, lower, crueler. Start fresh with the fun one. Laughter. Cards shuffled, a bottle uncorked, ice clinking in glasses. It wasn't the words alone. It was the ease of them, the way they sounded practiced. Like it wasn't the first time they'd imagined my death, and suddenly every moment replayed in high definition. The pamphlet on the counter, the power of attorney, the hidden texts. The moments he pushed for hiking trips, offshore getaways, skydiving packages. Adventurous, he said. Live a little, he urged. But now, those memories felt like setups. I backed away slowly, set the bourbon on the step, unclipped the ring from my finger, and placed it beside the bottle. For a second, I wanted to knock. Confront him, scream, ask him why. But I didn't. Because that's not who I was anymore. Confrontation gives them power. Silence gives you time. And I needed time to make sure he never saw me coming. I walked back to the car in silence. No music, no headlights, just my boots and the wind and the sound of my heart recalibrating itself around betrayal. I didn't cry. I didn't scream into the trees. That would come later, if at all. Right then, I was calculating. Every woman has a moment where she realizes she's the only one left protecting herself. This was mine. By the time I reached the car, my fingers were stiff from the cold, but my mind was sharp, clearer than it had been in months. I pulled out my phone, took a photo of the cabin, the license plate of Drake's rental, the timestamp, the snowfall pattern. Details matter when you're up against a man who thinks you're just a feeling he can outmaneuver. I opened my notes app and began typing everything I'd heard. Word for word, tone, pauses, laughter. And then I pressed record, held my phone in the direction of the porch just in case they said more. They didn't. They'd already said enough. I sat in the driver's seat for a long time, watching the windows glow like nothing had happened, like the world wasn't different now, like I wasn't different now. Drake had always been smooth, effortless. He had a way of making women feel chosen, even as he was calculating their exit. And I had been no exception, just a new chapter in his script. Another character to kill off for the plot to advance. But this time he'd written the wrong ending. Because I was still alive, still watching, still holding the pen. And maybe he thought I'd run, disappear, break. But I've never been more dangerous than when someone mistakes my silence for surrender. He didn't know it yet, but the second I walked away from that cabin, the game changed, and I wasn't the one losing. Because from this moment on, I would control every move, and the man who once plotted my absence was about to experience the full presence of a woman who sees everything and forgives nothing. By the time the plane lifted off the tarmac, I was no longer Leona Whitaker Fiancé. I was someone else entirely. I sat by the window, arms folded, watching Colorado shrink below me. The engagement ring was gone. The bourbon abandoned. My silence now weaponized. When I landed back in Austin, it was 4:12 a.m. I didn't go home. Instead, I drove to a hotel across town, paid cash, checked in under my middle name, no ID scan, no trail. I stood in the shower for nearly an hour, hot water pounding down on me like an exorcism. But it couldn't wash away what I knew, that the man I almost married had already planned my obituary. The next morning, I made 3 calls. First, my lawyer, Monica. No small talk. I need you to review every document I've signed with him in the last 6 months, I said, especially anything labeled estate or insurance. I need to know exactly what he has access to. She didn't ask questions, just said, give me 2 hours. Second, Ava, a PI with a spotless record and a quiet mouth. She'd helped Camille during her divorce, the kind where digital files mysteriously vanish. She knew where to dig. I need everything on Drake Hensley, I said. Personal, financial, offshore, hidden phones, hidden women. There was a beat of silence, then her voice sharpened. You're not trying to catch him cheating. You're trying to stay alive, aren't you? I didn't answer. She didn't need me to. Third, the bank. The joint account Drake insisted we open to build our future. The one I had almost forgotten about. I froze it. Then I moved my consulting income into a separate trust under my maiden name. Layered, shielded, untouchable. The teller, a woman maybe 5 years younger than me, looked up with concern. Would you like us to flag the account for unusual activity? She asked. I looked her in the eye. No, I want him to think nothing's changed, until it already has. She nodded. The smallest alliances are sometimes the strongest. By noon, Monica had sent over the documents. There it was, a supplemental life insurance policy with a payout of $3 million, my signature at the bottom, the doll. Forged, but passable. And the policy had been activated 6 weeks ago, the same week he'd booked the cabin trip. Everything had been lined up, the policy, the retreat, the false smile, and me. All he needed was a tragedy, but the tragedy now was his. I didn't leave the hotel for 3 days. The room was beige, forgettable, perfect. I ordered plain food, used a burner phone, checked my accounts every 2 hours. Nothing moved. No texts from Drake, no calls, no where are you or are you okay. Just silence. And honestly, that told me everything. He wasn't worried, because he thought he'd already won. I kept thinking back to the way he sounded in that cabin, relaxed, like he was planning a vacation, not my disappearance. And maybe that's what frightened me the most. Not that he wanted me gone, but that he'd rehearsed it so well he didn't think I'd notice. But I did. And now I had the one thing he never expected: time. Time to rebuild. Time to erase every trace of myself from the life we shared. Time to make sure the next time he looked for me, he found a ghost with a war plan. Ava sent her first report on day 4. He had 2 hidden bank accounts, one in the Caymans, another under a shell company based in Nevada. Transactions linked to luxury hotels, private lounges, and one recurring payment to a name I didn't recognize, Nora Devlin. A search pulled up an interior designer with a polished website and a suspiciously small social footprint. Too curated, too perfect. I sent Ava the link. 2 hours later, she replied, "Mistress, likely 5 months in. She doesn't know about you." Of course she didn't. Drake was too careful, too clean. Until now. I forwarded everything to Monica. She compiled a file, the fake signature, the money trail, the mistress, the messages, the audio I'd captured on my phone that night, not high quality, but clear enough to freeze blood. When she called me, her voice was clipped. "We have enough to trigger insurance fraud, wire fraud, and probable intent. If you want to go legal, I'll back you." I stared out the window, watched people walk past the lobby below, laughing, arguing, existing. None of them knew me. None of them saw a woman who was almost erased. I could go to the police, the press, his board. But revenge wasn't the point. Control was. And control is quiet. I took a deep breath, pressed the phone to my ear. "Not yet," I said. Let him believe I disappeared. Because the longer he believed I was gone, the more room I had to come back on my terms. The invitation was simple. Dinner, just us. No fights, no drama. I think we owe ourselves that. I sent it from a new number. He responded in under 3 minutes. "God, yes. I've missed you. When and where?" That's how I knew he was still asleep. Still convinced I was lost in my feelings, not focused on facts. I picked the place carefully. Downtown, upscale, familiar. The kind of place where we'd once celebrated his big breakthrough pitch, the same pitch I'd ghostwritten. He wore navy, I wore black. He smiled like a man walking back into a soft landing. His confidence came in waves, his steps light, his voice smooth, his hand reaching for mine across the white linen tablecloth. "You look amazing," he said. I was worried I'd ruined everything. I let him talk. About stress, about misunderstanding, about wanting a fresh start, clean slate, better foundation. So many metaphors, so little remorse. I didn't interrupt, not until the wine arrived. And then I opened my purse, pulled out the black folder, and slid it toward him. "What's this?" he asked, fingers already hovering. "The slate," I said. "Cleaned." Inside, printed copies of the forged insurance policy, statements from his shell accounts, a screenshot of Nora's direct deposit. And at the very back, a draft indictment from Monica, unsigned but real. Drake blinked. Laughed once. The kind of laugh you give when you hope charm still works. "Leona, what is this?" "You went through my accounts, that's illegal." So is signing my name. So is cashing in a policy for someone still breathing. His face changed then. The edges collapsed. The performance cracked. "Wait, just let's talk. You're angry. I get that. But this doesn't have to be war." I tilted my head. "I know, that's why I'm giving you a choice." He swallowed. And for the first time, he didn't speak. He stared down at the documents like they might rearrange themselves. I could almost see him sorting options in his head. Deny, deflect, charm, threaten, play the victim, buy time. But I was done giving time. "Read the last page," I said. He flipped it. There it was, my offer. A clean break, no charges, no press, no federal involvement. But one condition. He walked away from me, from my money, from the narrative. "You'll never be able to prove all this in court," he said eventually, voice lower now, tighter. "Maybe not, but I won't have to." He frowned. I leaned forward. "You know what they do with people who take out fraudulent life insurance policies, who hide assets in offshore accounts, who date their business consultants and pay them under aliases?" His lips tightened. His thumb twitched. He was losing grip on the moment, and he knew it. "I never hurt you," he said quietly. "I never laid a hand on you." And somehow that sentence made me colder than everything else. I straightened my back, spoke each word like a blade. "No, you just made a plan. A detailed, rehearsed, legally binding plan to make me disappear." He opened his mouth, then closed it. For once, Drake Hensley had nothing left to sell. I took out the final item, a USB drive. This is for Nora. If anything happens to me, she gets it. And the media. His jaw clenched. You're bluffing. I stood, dropped the drive into my bag, lifted my coat from the chair. You really think I flew 12 hours to bluff? He didn't follow me out, didn't call after me, didn't apologize, didn't beg. Just sat there alone, staring at the truth like it was a stranger, and I walked away not as the woman he'd tried to erase, but as the one who rewrote the ending. I didn't go home that night. Home no longer existed, not the one I'd shared with him. Instead, I checked into a hotel under a new alias, same one I'd used to freeze our joint accounts, same name on the trust where I kept every cent he hadn't stolen. My lawyer had instructions, my PI had backups. Nora had no idea what she was about to learn, but when she did, she'd see me for what I was, the warning before the storm. By morning, I'd filed to dissolve our engagement, filed a request to have my name removed from any property he touched, filed 3 reports: fraud, forgery, and financial misconduct. I didn't do it for revenge. I did it to reclaim authorship. Because for too long, I'd been cast as the loyal woman, the trusting one, the partner who understood. But what I understood now was this Drake didn't want love. He wanted leverage. And I just burned the ledger. He called once, block number, voicemail only. You didn't have to do this. We could have figured it out. You've made this so much worse than it needed to be. I didn't respond. Letting someone panic alone is a kind of closure. Within a week, I heard from Ava. His Cayman account was frozen. Nora had packed up and vanished. And someone from his firm had quietly resigned. A foundation cracks from the inside, but only if you stop holding it up. And I'd stopped. By the end of the month, Drake was under investigation. Not by me, by the state. Turns out faking signatures and hiding money catches more than just your fiancé's attention. As for me, I rented a cottage outside Marfa. Small, quiet, sunlight through every window. I painted for the first time in years. Read books without checking the time. Learned how silence sounds when it isn't haunted. And one evening, watching the desert turn gold, I realized something. He never saw me coming, because men like him never look for the woman who walks away before they can push her. He wanted my absence, he got it, but not before I made sure he'd feel it in every room he enters, every account he opens, every mirror he avoids. He'll never forget me, but me, I finally forgot him. 3 months later, I stood on the porch of a small house in the desert. It wasn't much, just 2 bedrooms, 1 wide table by the window, and a lemon tree growing sideways in the wind. But it was mine. I drank my coffee black now, didn't flinch when the silence stretched too long, didn't reach for my phone to prove I existed. I was here, and I was whole. I hadn't posted online since the night I left Telluride. No stories, no check-ins, no curated proof of life. Drake must have hated that. He thrived on optics, on knowing what people could see. And now he couldn't see me at all. I read a news article about him last week. Just a small paragraph buried in the finance section. An internal audit. A temporary leave of absence. No charges yet. But smoke like that always leads to fire. I wondered if he still kept bourbon in his cabinet. If he walked by the bottle and thought of the porch of the ribbon of the woman he thought would never fight back. I hoped so. Some memories deserve to ache. Camille came to visit last weekend. She brought wine and silence, 2 things we both appreciated more with age. We sat on the porch, legs tucked under us, watching the stars move like secrets overhead. You look different, Padme. Oh, you look different, she said. I am. We didn't talk about Drake, not much. Just once she asked, would you have gone through with the wedding? I didn't answer right away, because the truth wasn't simple. There was a version of me, the one who still believed in redemption, who might have stood at that altar and thought love could outshine instinct. But that version of me is gone. Now I don't wait for love to prove itself. I ask questions. I trust pauses more than promises. And I never ignore the silence between someone's words. That's where the truth lives. One morning I opened a blank canvas, no sketches, no plan, just white. And I painted, wide uneven strokes, the shape of a road that split in 2. One path was golden, open, alive. The other dark, smooth, easy. I named it The Door I Didn't Open. I sold it for more than I ever made in a single campaign. Funny how clarity pays better than branding. Sometimes people ask me if I'll ever date again, if I'll trust again. I smile, because I don't need to answer that, not yet. I don't need a new story to move on. I just needed to finish this one my way. So here it is. He planned to erase me, and instead I became the one story he'll never be able to rewrite. And me. I walked out of the fire with nothing in my hands except the match, and that was enough.